shoot, the scarier thing for me is if I had all power to think about that, how would I behave? If you had all power, how would you behave? I wonder if any of us would be the first person in history where they could put the word the kind, or the great, or the benevolent, or the just after our names. Yeah. What's that notification designed to do? Is it designed to better serve you in some way? Or is it designed to distract you from what you're doing? That's the thing about the phone. It's tough because when you talk about it, I say this with all the love in the world. It's like trying to talk to a heroin addict about why heroin's bad for them. You know? You just don't know. You never do. Oh my God, I can't believe how like old people think heroin's bad for them. Like somehow it's a new thing. And it's not a new thing. And then again, I point out that notice that when we're talking about technology, we always go back to social media. We're not talking about like maps, right? You know, like GPS. We're not talking about, you know, a lot of times like the health apps. We tend to go right to social media like that's the whole purpose of it. And if that is the whole purpose of it, then I guess the question is, what's the purpose of social media? It's to distract us, but to distract us from what? And what's it creating? It distracts us from real life, real human interactions. And it creates like an alternate digital world where now you're split between two worlds. You're living in this physical reality over here, but man, that other one's so great because everything's perfect there. Everyone has great stories going on. The best moments of your life are all recorded there. And if that's the case, then why would you not want to move from this physical world with all of its disappointments, with all of its pain, with all of its suffering, and just not completely go into this world where everything is perfect and curated? Especially guys. You know, I feel so bad for you dudes, man. I really do. I mean, things are a little bit different. Things are changing again, but for the longest while, you've been living in a society that tells you that your very nature is toxic and that everybody else can do their, you know, just be yourself except for you dudes. Shut up. You know, be berated. And your very nature is toxic. I don't know why you wouldn't just go online and play video games all the time. Over here, you have a crap job. People talk crap to you all the time. You're always being told that there's something wrong with you. But then you go online and you can be a virtual god. You can be in a fantasy world where people actually can know your avatar over there. You can have friends based off of how you see yourself and not as society is defining you. Man, I don't know why a lot of people wouldn't do it. Yeah, that's crazy, by the way, because that's entirely right, and yet we're putting so much of our future in AI, which doesn't feel and doesn't care. I know, that's my point. We're as humans, we're turning over so much of our society and how things operate to a thing that we acknowledge doesn't feel or care. It's interesting. Go ahead. I'm trying to figure out that part about the feeling bad. Like if someone's a slave, and you call them a slave because you think they are a slave, are you trying to make them feel bad? I get your point. I see why you would think that he's doing that. I'm just wondering if he really is. He might be. But I mean, it'd be interesting if he was, because he wrote this on a computer probably, and it was probably printed by a printing press. And we see stories like that all the time, and yet we still say, "Huh, I guess we just need to keep working on it." I mean, I don't know. I don't know because it doesn't feel. Yeah. And going back to the idea that you have to be on social media. And we point out there's only one person here who's not, but you know, as Nassim was saying, that it's a choice. Yeah, it is a choice. It is a choice. Now the choice starts to get pulled away from you. Just like, for example, I made a reference to heroin earlier. The first time you do heroin, it's a choice. It really is. The second time, it's a little bit less of a choice, but it's a choice. Eventually, you get addicted to it, and it's still a choice, but there's a chemical component that's pulling you to do it. Your brain actually gets rewired. Later in the semester, I'm gonna talk about how, like for example, cocaine will actually rewire your neurological system. When I was doing my PhD, I had to do a class on neuropsychology, so we had to study these things. And it's absolutely fascinating. After just one use, it literally rewires your brain. And people say, like, that's not true because I've done it once and I haven't gotten addicted. You haven't gotten addicted, maybe. Some people do get addicted after one time, but it did rewire your brain. And you wouldn't even know it if it did. Because, like earlier, we were joking around and you said something about, someone being dumb. And like, if you ask a person, are you dumb? A dumb person wouldn't know they were dumb. Of course they wouldn't realize it. In fact, what we find is that dumb people think they're the smartest. If you're familiar with this, it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'll talk more about that later. But the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially this research that demonstrated that people who think that they're the most competent, the people who think they're the smartest, they are statistically the least competent and the least intelligent. The most competent and the most intelligent people are the people who rate themselves a little bit, just a bit above average. And it makes sense, because if you're dumb, you don't know what you don't know. If you're dumb, you don't know what you don't know. You have to have a level of intelligence to know that you don't know things, because you have to know that there's a whole world out there that you just don't understand. It takes some humility as well. And it takes intelligence to have humility, because you have to be aware that you don't know things. You have to be aware that there are people who are better than you. But a person with low intelligence can't accept the fact that there are people who know more than them, because they can't understand the difference between what they know and what somebody else knows, if that makes sense. And so you can tell who's intelligent by the people who are humble and see themselves as a bit above average, which sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. Now, at a point when someone says, I'm not addicted to this stuff, I can stop anytime I want. That's the thing, you don't know what you don't know, because your brain has literally been rewired by these dopamine rushes, these dopamine pushes. And so it's definitely a choice to start. And it's weird because when do most people start getting on social media? Junior high school, elementary school. And it's funny because almost all of them have these agreements. You're not supposed to be under a certain age, 13. It used to be 18 for Facebook. I'm sure what it is now. I think it's 16. And yet you can look at people, like they'll even put on there, I'm in junior high school. And Facebook is like, okay. Now, at what point would we start giving heroin to someone and say, well, it was a choice to start heroin? It makes it harder, that's true. And just because something is difficult doesn't mean doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's an excuse for doing it. But it is what it is. And it is interesting because I'm finding myself, as I'm approaching the subject, it may not seem like it, but I try to be very almost tender with it, because I see the absolute visceral reactions that I get. Like talking to 10th graders about this, forget about it. It's just anger. It's just arms folded, pissed off faces. You don't understand. You don't know. Blah, blah, blah. They won't say it, but it's on their body. It's in their body language. It's in their expressions. When you get a little bit older, you can start to see these things. There's a little bit less hostility, but it's it just tells you something that if someone comes in and told me, hey, Scallon, Santa Claus is real, it wouldn't bother me. If someone came in and said, Scallon, you in fact are Santa Claus, it wouldn't bother me, because I know it's not true. The stuff that tends to offend me is when I know that something is true and I know it says something bad about me. And at that point I'm forced with a decision. Do I keep going in the direction that I know is wrong and then have to create a fictional world to justify it? You don't understand. That's not true. You're lying. Blah, blah, blah. The research is bullshit. Blah, blah, blah. Or do I accept it and go, I gotta make myself better now. But that's a choice with a lot of different things in life. That's scary, isn't it? Because gods always end up looking like the things that create them. So when you're looking at AI, we go, it's not perfect. Okay, so it's just a reflection of humanity. If AI is a reflection of humanity, we are in deep shit. Because what would you do if you had full power over the world? There have been a few people who have tried. Are there anybody who we look at as somehow being like this person who ruled a massive empire and then put the word the kind afterwards? Alexander the Kind. Even if you look at Alexander the Great, that's not a reference to how he treated people. He actually did treat people pretty well, asterisk, compared to the people of his time. Today we look at him and go, the guy's a genocidal maniac. At the time, he was just a guy who got stuff done. And he was better than, like he incorporated Persians into his empire. Whereas his army said, no, wipe them out. He's like, no, we incorporate them into our empire so that they can serve us. Today we look at that and go, so you're just taking control of them so they can serve you. Yeah, but they get to live and they get to join our empire and they get to enjoy the fruits of our. Today we would judge them very differently. But I mean, there aren't very many people who've like conquered or even taken control of. In fact, I can't even use that word because that's the only way you take control of large parts of the world, through conquering. And then imagine now if that person had all power, how would they behave? Shoot, the scarier thing for me is if I had all power to think about that. How would I behave? If you had all power, how would you behave? I wonder if any of us would be the first person in history where they could put the word the kind or the great or the benevolent or the just after our names. Yeah, conscience. Ooh, I'd be careful with that. We have no idea what consciousness is. And I'll say it again, we have no idea what consciousness is. We can put words to it to try to explain it, but it's always explained through analogy. We don't even know where consciousness comes from. Like if I were to ask you, where does consciousness come from? We'll say, the brain. Where? What's responsible for the creation of consciousness? We have no idea. We have some guesses, but we have no idea. And this is why when people talk about making AI conscious, if we do, it'll be by accident, because we don't know how it happens. And that's like, I won't get into it, but like if you were to, I even get fumbled up talking about it. It's such a difficult thing for us to get our heads around, because for us, consciousness is just Wednesday. We're all just conscious, and we just know that we are. And if I were to ask you where it comes from, we'd probably just say, I don't know, the brain, because we think everything comes from the brain. But then when you get people who actually research it, they'll be very clear. It certainly comes from the brain. It's the release of neurons. Do we know this? No. But it seems to be. Because we will start to conflate like thinking processes with consciousness. To be conscious is to be self-aware. And to be self-aware, we have no idea where that self-awareness comes from. And again, for so many people, can just pass by like, who cares? Or it's just the way things are. We start to find that these really like silly philosophical questions start to matter dramatically later on, like consciousness. Because now all of a sudden we've been wrestling with this thing for 3,000 years, what consciousness is. And now all of a sudden we're trying to figure out if this artificial intelligence is conscious. All of a sudden it matters. So the idea I was talking about earlier of having like a real world and a digital world, and this separation between the two, and the people who abandon the one world to live in the one that they know is fake, one that they know is not real, and then feeling like their lives are unfulfilling, like surprise, surprise. But that's the thing that's a question that was posited by Plato 3,000 years ago. So yeah. Is that it? Okay. It's all fascinating. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques.